Welcome to Take This Job and Love It. I'm Gerry Walsh. In this episode, you're going to get practical advice about how to build your career and get a job that you love. I'll help you get launched in the right career path, move up the corporate ladder, or find more meaningful work. I'm Gerry Walsh, and I'm going to help you find a job you really love. Don't go away. By all accounts, Ian Kavanagh has a deep personal desire to seeing Atlantic Canadian companies grow and succeed. An engineer by training, he has a storied career in the technology sector as an investor, a director, and a mentor to many IT startups. Right now, he is the CEO and shareholder of Amber Solutions, a growing regional company that has just been ranked number 3 in Canada on the best places to work list. Ian, congratulations on that award, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much, Gerry. It's a pleasure to be here.
So you've obviously found a career path that you love. Tell us how that all came about.
It was very accidental to a great extent. I studied electrical engineering, not because I originally wanted to be an engineer. I found math and science relatively easy in grade school, which kind of led me into engineering. I tell people when I was a youngster, if I had a clock or a radio that broke, I didn't pull it apart and try and fix it. I figured out how to finance the purchase of a new one. So I've always had more of a business bent. But graduated from engineering, started my career with NBTEL, and things really took off from there. It was the environment that basically the more you were willing to take on, the more they were willing to give you. I really fed off of that environment. And then basically it opened a number of doors into a series of tech startups, and it's just been a wonderful career.
Interesting. Now you're the CEO of Amber Solutions, 55-person employee operation. So for the benefit of people who don't know who Amber is, tell us, give us a quick summary of what the company is.
Right. In its simplest form, Amber is an information technology consulting group. Okay. And what we do, we have knowledge of technology, and we help our clients understand technology and the application of technology to solve their business challenges. Interesting.
So Amber has just placed 3rd overall in Canada, as I mentioned, the best places to work list. So what are some of the things the company does to earn that award?
Well, I think, Gerry, it starts with hiring great people. I mean, you don't get accolades like this, I think, accidentally. We've done, I think, some of the right things by way of creating a culture that resonates with people, but I think we've also done a really good job at hiring really good people. Then it's putting programs in place. We have a program called Amber Cares, which focuses on charitable initiatives. That's something that our people see as deeply meaningful, and that actually gives them a deeper sense of purpose in their everyday work, which motivates them to contribute to this undertaking. That'd be one example. We do a lot of small things with the team. We have get-togethers on Friday. We have Pizza Fridays where we bring in the kids at the end of the day. So this is more than just the individual. It's about their families and their broader support group. And again, I think we've probably been lucky to get some of the recognition as well, but it comes as a result of some hard work.
Well, it's a fabulous award, and congratulations again on getting that. But, so you mentioned culture in organizations, and so I mean, how do you get culture in an organization, and how do you teach it to employees?
Well, it's an interesting question, and it's something we spend a lot of our time and energy on. I think to some extent it's one of those things that evolves organically over time. But for us, it started with creating a foundation around values. We defined our values. They're on our website. People see them. It's honesty, integrity, respect, teamwork, diversity. And they aren't just words. We didn't come up with these words, threw them on a wall, and walked away from them. We said, this is how we will govern our business. This is how we will treat our people and our clients. And ultimately, I think when people see us walk the talk, that's the moment of truth. Then they see it's real. People subscribe to that. They can appreciate how we're going to behave in most situations. And I think that creates culture. So I don't necessarily know that you can teach people culture, but I think you can demonstrate through your behavior and actions what you expect of them, and then it's for them to be part of it.
People will pick it up then over time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's interesting. So now think back over your career, and I mean, obviously you've had a lot of people that have influenced you over time. I mean, what are some of the leadership lessons that you have learned yourself over your career thus far?
Well, I guess for me personally, and I don't want to sound kind of false modest when I say this, I'm an average smart person. You know, there were lots of people that I would have gone to school with and I worked with over the years that were genius. But I'm average smart, but what I also have is a work ethic that is out of this world. And I think, you know, if there's one thing I've learned, work ethic is perhaps more valuable in business than just straight out smarts. That would be one of my lessons. The other thing would be to appreciate who you are and try and be your authentic self in business. I think people see that and they feel it when they do business with you, and that makes a difference.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, two good points. So how about some of those role models or mentors that have influenced you over the years?
I've been very fortunate to have a number of them. I would start first and foremost probably with Gerry Pond, who was a former CEO of NBTEL. What I learned from Gerry was about vision and the conviction to kind of stay on vision. There will be a lot of naysayers. A lot of people will question what you're doing or how you're doing it. That's what I had the benefit of getting from Gerry. Greg Shankman was the CEO and founder of a company called Genesis in California. I learned a lot from Greg around understanding motivation and behavior of people, and equally appreciating to trust your intuition.
Sure.
Last person would be Mark Gainey, again, founder and CEO of a tech company in California called Kana Communications. And from Mark, it really was a lot about culture and humility and leadership. So I've had the benefit to have some great mentors.
Yeah, good lesson for young people to try to gain a role model or mentor along the way.
Absolutely.
As well. So how about some of the mistakes that you've made in your career? Any regrets?
I'd love to say there's no regrets, but there's always regrets along the way. I think for every strength a person has, you know, there's a shadow to it. One of my key strengths has been passion. I think, you know, regret I would have is maybe how that passion manifested itself earlier in my career, because I was ambitious, I wanted to get things done. That would result sometimes in a bit of a fire, ready, aim approach. Right. Or I would be frustrated that people couldn't keep up with me. So I think that's something I've learned over time. You have to be more patient and appreciate that people are different than you, but you have to figure out how to make it work together as a team.
Yeah, and you learn by trial and error too, I suppose, through that. As well. So judging by your LinkedIn profile, it seems you're heavily committed to growing the economy of the regions. You're a member of the New Brunswick Business Council and the Board of Governors of NSCC, to name a few. I mean, what is it that motivates you to be involved in organizations that way?
I feel it is a deep sense of obligation, and that is really born out of the leaders that have come before us. We've got wonderful role models. Much of kind of the formative years of my career were in New Brunswick, where there was the David Ganongs and Derek Olins. On the political side, it was Frank McKenna in a leadership role. We see them today, and you know, they have been successful and been recognized by almost every possible measure, and they are still giving. And so I feel that, you know, I had the opportunity to be mentored, if you will, or be led, or had great role models in leadership from them, and I just feel that there's a deep sense of obligation to continue to do the same.
So in the last 30 seconds of this segment, so you've been an investor in a number of startups. I mean, and briefly, what do you look for when you're considering an investment?
For me, it boils down to people, which would be no surprise given my focus on culture. If they're really smart people who are motivated, I want to figure out how to work with them. They also have to be solving a real world problem. Sure. You know, they can't be fantasizing about what the challenge may be. But if they've got a real world problem or opportunity and they're really smart, motivated people, I love to work with them.
Interesting. Earlier I asked Ian to tell us about the most defining moment of his career. As we go to a commercial break, listen to what he had to say.
Most defining moment in my career, it's hard to pick out just one, but certainly one that comes to mind was the day that I walked into Gerry Pond's office at NBTEL and chose to resign. NBTEL had been very good to me in my career, had been very supportive, had given me advancement opportunities, and Gerry specifically as a mentor and coach, it was a difficult personal decision to make. At the same time, I had decided it was time for me to spread my wings. I wanted to join a technology company in the Silicon Valley by the name of Genesis. I felt I had a lot to prove to myself. I had had the experience at NBTEL, but now I wanted to see, could I be an executive at a high-tech company in California, where many of the people were Harvard grads, Stanford grads, MIT grads. Could a kid from Atlantic Canada with a degree from Acadia and Dow go play a big boys game? And sure enough, I did, and have never looked back since.
Welcome back to Take This Job and Love It. My name is Gerry Walsh. My guest is Ian Kavanagh, CEO of Amber Solutions. Ian, Amber, as I mentioned earlier, now has about 55 employees. So tell us about some of the types of positions that you hire for in your company.
So the typical titles would include project managers, business analysts, technical and functional architects, software architects, and software developers.
Okay. And so when you interview for candidates or seek to fill those sort of positions, and what are some of the technical and the personal qualities that you look for in prospective candidates?
Well, first and foremost, the technical prerequisites are key. I mean, this is a technology industry, so they generally have backgrounds in computer science or engineering or have had appropriate technical experience. I let others in the company really vet them technically because there are people better positioned than I to do that. I'm the one who tries to understand their personality type and make a determination if I think they're a good fit with us culturally.
Mm-hmm. And so when you're doing that, I mean, what are some of the typical questions that you'd ask of candidates?
Ironically enough, and this is very funny because we make light of it in the office, I ask candidates a single question, and the single question is, who is Gerry? Now, I give them a fairly lengthy preamble to give context to the question. But the real goal is to understand who they are, not what they've done. I can go to their LinkedIn profile, I can go to their CV and see what they've done. I'm trying to discern who they are, and who they are, who any of us are, is really a byproduct of our life experiences. Happiness, sadness, success, failure. Not something we're typically programmed to walk into an interview and discuss.
Interesting, yeah. So, and when you think about some of the interviews that you've done over the years, I mean, what are the 2 or 3 things that candidates are not good at doing?
I think failing to listen to the question. You know, they're already trying to formulate what they're going to say versus really actively listening to what's being asked of them. That would be one thing, and in doing so, perhaps not being authentically who they are. The other thing would be if I don't really feel they're being truthful in how they're responding, and you can feel that, and it's there.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. That advice, just be yourself, which others have given, is very valuable advice to follow. So one of the things that I've observed over the years, Ian, is that candidates actually have difficulty selling themselves. Most of people tend to undersell themselves. They're too humble or shy to speak about themselves. Do you experience that, and what would you recommend to somebody?
We do at times. I think given that we take a different tact when we're interviewing, I think gets people to a level of comfort where they're comfortable talking about themselves. I think the challenge is, and in Atlantic Canada it's particularly significant, we're afraid of being boastful. I think if people can just be confident in their communications and not worry about being cocky or know where the line is between those two things, I think it's okay. Sure,
yeah. My experience is that people who generally are shy or humble, as you say, and don't want to be arrogant, and to go from there to being cocky, they won't get into that zone as well. So try to feel a bit uncomfortable in your description of yourself, and you're probably in the right zone.
Yeah. You have to be selling yourself.
Yeah, no question about that. So Amber is still a relatively small company, 55 employees, but good size for this region. But so I presume fit with the team is pretty critical. So how do you measure fit? It's a term that's used a lot, and I presume you engage others in your company to do that. Just describe some of that process.
We do, Gerry, and we've been accused before of having a fairly protracted process associated with recruiting and hiring, because we want the individuals we're considering to meet as many people across the company as possible. And through that exercise, we better discern their technical capabilities, and collectively we're able to determine if we think there's a fit. I think as important is for the individual to feel what we're like as an organization. No one is going to sell Amber more than I am. I'm incredibly passionate about them, and I can probably have you working for us in 10 minutes. But I think the real proof in the pudding is when they meet others in the organization, and that's where there's real validation of what we're doing and what we're about as a company.
You're I'll use the term parading candidates through the organization. So if you were advising a candidate what to be doing or thinking about while they're being paraded through, what would it be?
We touched on already, it's just being yourself and appreciating that we as an organization are very genuine when we say that. We want to know who you are. Don't try and pretend, you're someone you're not. Just be yourself. We're interested in that.
It's important advice as well for candidates, I suppose, to realize they're always being assessed in a way, even if it's not the process you follow. The moment they walk in the door, somebody's paying attention to how they speak and behave and so on.
Absolutely.
So to be on the guard. So you've said in the past that you've had difficulty attracting people to your organization, not because of the organization, but because of the types of roles, I guess, that you're recruiting for. But what are some of those problems that you encounter, and why is there difficulty recruiting the people that you're looking for?
I think there's a couple things at play here. Number one, we have a very high bar, so we make it slightly difficult for ourselves from the outset. I think secondly, there's a reality in Atlantic Canada, and Canada more generally, is that there's a bit of a crisis brewing when it comes to the availability of technology professionals. For me, this actually goes back to the internet bubble and burst over a decade ago, where I think a lot of parents counseled their children not to pursue careers in technology because it's a cyclical thing, it's boom and bust. Well, the problem is, if you go back to that period of time and you assume that those kids elected not to pursue those educations, that would have been the cohort today who would have taken a 5-year education and had 5 years experience. Hence, there's a big gap. That's one thing, I think, as well. In our primary education system, we need some fundamental reform. I think we need more kids staying in math and science and not kind of self-selecting out. And I would argue that every child graduating from primary education, kind of the P to 12 system, should be able to code. And that sounds pretty crazy, but there is not a single segment of our society that technology does not touch today. And I think everyone should at least have some level of appreciation of what that means.
And a much broader issue to discuss as well.
Certainly.
So I want to ask you too, a lot of candidates are confused about what to do after the interview, the follow-up. Should I call the employer? Sometimes the employer says, I'll call you back in a week, and there's no telephone call. I mean, what advice would you give to somebody about following up, and do you look for somebody to follow up with you?
Right. So again, we're specific and maybe a little different. When I've wrapped up with a candidate, I ask them to go away and think about it. I say, I don't want to know what you're feeling or thinking at this very moment. Take a couple days, let this sit with you. If after that period of time you're still interested in conversation with us, then follow up with us. So there's really two objectives in that. One is to see if they're actually listening. So the person who gets back to me 10 minutes after they get home wasn't really listening. The second thing, the person who doesn't get back to me at all, well, there's a sign of professionalism or lack thereof in that. So making sure they're listening, take a couple days, and then follow up with me. And that demonstrates that you listened and you're demonstrating
That's interesting advice for employers as well who may be assessing candidates. That's a great idea, I think, to take a few days, tell the candidate take a few days and think about it as well. I do want to ask you about job offers. And I know a lot of candidates going through the process think that when they're made a job offer from an employer, there's a little bit of wiggle room here on the part of the employer. Is that so? What advice can you give to candidates?
It's so, and that's the convention, and it drives us nuts. So when we talk, and as we've talked here today, Gerry, a lot about our culture and our approach, our view is we'd like the candidate to trust us. And so it's ironic that when a person is first joining an organization, that they actually go through a process that inherently creates distrust. You know, I want to make X, I want to pay you Y. We're going to go through this negotiation as opposed to everyone putting their cards on the table and saying, this is ideally what I'd like to earn, and this is what we would like to offer you based on our assessment. Something that's critically important for us is being fair to our existing and current team, and not creating a situation where we're bringing someone in at an arbitrary high level. We share this with candidates and explain to them our process, and then we let them know that it's not a negotiation. And I unfortunately have lost people because they've come back to negotiate, whereupon we say, that's the end.
Good advice. And very quick in the last 20 seconds or so, how much value do you place in a cover letter?
Personally, not a great deal. I mean, I live in the domain of the electronic world and technology. I look at LinkedIn, I look at social media. The covering letter is less important to me.
We have to go to commercial break right now, but when we come back, Ian's going to tell us the 3 secrets of his career success and answer some questions that you've sent in. Welcome back to Take This Job and Love It. My name is Gerry Walsh. My guest is Ian Kavanagh, the CEO of Amber Solutions. Ian, in a few minutes we're going to get you to share your 3 secrets to career success, but I've got a couple questions from viewers that I want to run by you first. Here's the first one. I was being interviewed by a search committee recently for a job, and one of the interviewers asked me why they should not hire me. I was at a loss for words and actually couldn't think of any way to answer that question. Was that a fair question, and if so, how might I have answered it?
Is it a fair question? I think it really boils down to what was the intent of the question. I think if the intent was to completely throw someone off their game, I think that's slightly less fair. At the same time, I think if it was intended to try and have the person demonstrate their level of self-awareness, to point out some of their weaknesses, I mean that in essence is what the question was, asked a different way, I think it's entirely fair. I think the way to answer it is just be honest and open. Talk about where you think some of the perhaps weaknesses are, and maybe then use it as an opportunity to also identify how you would overcome either personal or
Yeah, but
professional
we all have
deficiencies.
shortcomings, of course, and they can be mitigated. It's not really a problem in the end as well. Here's the second question. So rather than looking for a traditional job, and that was submitted in quotes, I'm thinking about starting my own business. While I like the idea of being my own boss, I don't know where the opportunities are. Any suggestions on how I could approach this?
I think, you know, the internet is a wonderful tool. And I would say it boils down to research, research, research. You know, a lot of people have good ideas and then they jump headlong into the idea thinking this will turn into a business. I think the more time you can invest in trying to understand what is the problem area you're trying to solve, is it a unique problem, and is your solution a particularly unique solution to address that problem? I think a lot of people would be better served by doing more research, because the reality is many of the ideas that we think we have that are the best idea in the world have already been thought of. So I would just spend a lot of time doing research and making sure that you understand what problem it is you're trying to
Trying to
solve.
solve a problem as opposed to creating a need and hoping they will come is an interesting one as well. Here's the third one, the final one. How important is it to have a social media presence when looking for a job?
So, you know, as an employer, we think it's important. Again, we gravitate to social media tools like LinkedIn. I'm an active, if not a power user of LinkedIn. I would be on LinkedIn 10 times a day, looking at candidates, prospective candidates, clients, prospective clients. So I think it's important to, in that context, you know, whether or not you need to be an active Twitterer or whether you use Facebook or other social media, I'm less interested in that, but I think your professional persona in the social media context being represented in LinkedIn is actually very important.
Interesting as well. So where does luck come into play in career planning? I know a lot of people kind of have a career path mapped out. Maybe their parents had a certain career and they followed that way, and so that's all planned. And others, you know, kind of fly by the seat of the pants, being open to opportunities. Just sort of explain how luck works compared to sort of planning.
You know, it sounds a little bit cliche, but you know, the harder you work, the luckier you get. I am a staunch believer that if you commit yourself to what you're doing, you do a good job for your employer, for colleagues, or for your clients, a lot of luck happens, a lot of doors open. And I don't think there's a successful business person alive who couldn't sit here and, if they were honest, say I was very lucky in my career. That includes myself.
Really
for sure.
a combination of careful planning and sort of being open to opportunities and just be aware that luck is going to happen.
Luck will happen.
As well as bad luck, I suppose, from time to time. So when you think back over your career, I mean, what are you most proud of?
Most proud of it? It's probably several things. First, I think I'm proud that I always maintained a human view in business. I think some people, you know, it's a bit of a cop-out, but will say, oh, well, that's just business. They'll rationalize their behavior. I think I've always cared about the people I've had the good fortune to work with or led. I think secondly, I think I've been able to maintain my integrity, and that was critically important to me. And I think people feel that when I work with them. The last thing, and it would be very specific, actually involves an opportunity I had a number of years ago to hire a number of Ukrainian software engineers and bring they and their families to St. John. And to watch them make a life for themselves, to go from, you know, the former Soviet Union to come here to contribute both culturally and economically in a positive way to our region, and fast forward to today to see their children graduating top of their class from universities who will now make even a greater contribution.
They're all still in Canada, are they?
They're still in Canada, and you know, I only had a small role to play in that in terms of having the opportunity to recruit them, but I was very, very gratified by that.
That's an excellent movement there on your part in the companies. So in our last moment, just tell us about the 3 secrets of career success. If you were passing 3 pieces of advice on to young viewers out there about their careers, what would they be?
Oh, I have 10, but I'll give you 3. I think first and foremost, it would be taking risk. Be prepared to take risk. Doors open, walk through the door, and you'll be amazed what will happen. Number 2, I would say be prepared to work hard. Nothing makes up for hard work, so be prepared to work hard. Number 3, seek out mentors and actively cultivate those relationships. These are people that can have a profound impact on your career, either by helping you to open doors or just giving you the opportunity to learn from their own experience.
Great piece of advice. Ian, thanks very much for joining us today. I really enjoyed the conversation. I'll be right back with our final wrap-up. So that's it for today's show. I hope you learned from what Ian Kavanagh of Amber Solutions told us. If you'd like to receive your own daily career tip, you can follow me on Twitter at Gerald_Walsh. And if you have a question you would like us to answer in a future show, just send an email to questions@takethisjobandloveit.ca. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next time when we'll have another great guest to help you find a job you really love. See you then.